Thought I was hot. I just know they don't post those props that far out if there's a questionable player in the NFL. Then the question becomes what you were saying is like, okay, well then, is it the injuries that pop up later on in the week and then you get burned on that? I don't know. I still, maybe you're right. Maybe it is just the whole market-based versus doing it on your own than finding value. Because I think, like, if you're doing it on your own, right, and not taking a market-based approach, being able to jump in on a Thursday is super valuable.
Yeah, it's also one of the reasons, though, that there is so much value to betting based on news is because the market just doesn't react all that well to it. That's what I've found.
Sure. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB strategy show. Only 5 games of action there. You get one at like 1 o'clock. Outside of that, 6:40 first pitch tonight between the Mets and Phillies. That kicks off the slate. You only have 5 games. A very chalky Tyler Glasnow against the K-heavy Cincinnati Reds team. And then a bunch of other pitchers and stacks that we're going to talk about. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. If you don't mind, take 1 single second this morning, atone for your sins, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. You're watching, listening after the fact. What do you think? Something nice, something not so nice, doesn't matter. We read and respond to them. And if you ever want to listen in podcast form, we got you covered. Apple Podcast, Spotify, any archaic platform you still listen to, or that one that Josh was talking about because it removes dead air. So he gets like 30 extra seconds of his life back each time he watches a podcast. We had a big discussion about this, Greg. He's like, well, they remove all of the dead space in the podcast automatically, like algorithmically. And I was like, okay, so you're getting what, an additional 1.5 minutes maybe on a 45-minute podcast? But hey, we're there too, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows what the hell Josh is listening to that he has interest in, but maybe he just listens to terrible podcasts that are a lot of dead air.
That is possible. Just the long pauses and the boring nature, the droning on. It's possible as well. Look, Josh does some odd stuff. Some of it's actually helped me. What is that? And then I look it up and I go, it's pretty nice. Won't be venturing over that way. I actually don't like, I think the podcast format is awesome, but because I have YouTube Premium, I just never find myself listening to podcasts because I just close my phone on YouTube and then I'll open it if they're saying something and I want to watch the actual podcast.
I can't remember the last time I listened to something just on podcast for myself. Like, also because just the available time I have, I'm not listening to full length podcasts. So it might be something comes up like, I don't know, like Theo Vaughn clips or something like that, or Shane Gillis clips, or like maybe Joe Rogan's interviewing somebody who I find to be interesting. So listen to clip. Like I'm never listening to full, like 2-3 hour long podcasts. I'm mostly listening to like clips and parts of podcasts on YouTube.
Yeah. Clips are nice. Clayton's cover this slate in 15 minutes and spend the rest of the hour explaining Pennsylvania politics for us. That's not happening, dude. No, I tweeted this morning because now calls are coming for like this presidential debate that potentially happens, Greg. Calls are coming for both of the candidates to be drug tested and checked for electronic devices. Like this is where we're at in the country now. No matter what side you're on, there's no way this can inspire confidence right now. It's crazy.
I'm so far outside the loop on anything that matters to most people. To me, like I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, what is the line going to be in the Hurricanes Rangers game today? So like, it doesn't even register to me because to me, it's so uninteresting. And I feel I have so little impact on it that I could not be bothered to give a shit about politics.
Yeah. Eric, can we bet on the debates? I'm sure you can on, what's that site? What's that site where you can bet on presidential, like on elections, where the essentially like the odds are in dollars and cents?
DraftKings?
Definitely not. I forget what it is. It's out there though. Boss Bro just got Odd Shopper and shit been crushing. Hell yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's an awesome tool. I get as much as I can down from the Odd Shopper tools every single day. Also, boss bro, Greg and I this is what we were talking about when we opened the show. Make sure to check out the market-based EV results, like full transparency on how all of the bets that we have, where we give you the EV and the true odds and everything, how all of them have done. I think that tool is going to go a really long way, Greg, in helping us kind of decipher which are the best spots to hit, not just which are the best props on which book, but what time of day.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's fun to look at. Loughran and I were talking about it before because it's just numbers. You wouldn't think it's as interesting as it is, but I found myself just looking at it and trying to figure like, hey, if I'm going to bet total base props for baseball, do I want to do it now? Do I want to wait until closer to the game starts? Do I want to do something in between? Because it's just like little ways to try to optimize what times it is that I am placing my bets.
Yeah. And because neither of us have all the time in the day, I think the approach that I'm going to take is just like, if it's a time in the day where I have time to get my bets in, if I'm using the mass entry tool or not, I'm just going to go in and see which spots have performed best in that time period. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Anyway, you want to check it out, links down there in the description, and chat. You could do a week or month. It's not even a read. I'm just playing off a boss bro here. Anyway, let's get into it. 5 games, not a ton. I mean, look, the first things first. We just have to jump straight into Tyler Glasnow. I'll be honest with you, Greg. I don't understand the price point on Glasnow. Like, I get that it's a 5-game slate, and sometimes DraftKings tries to soften pricing because it makes it harder to build lineups. Otherwise, I mean, he's 11-3 on FanDuel, but I still think at 10-4, he against a Cincinnati team that has the 3rd highest K rate in the league versus righties, a sub-3 run implied total today at Dodger Stadium. It is just too good of a spot for Tyler Glasnow, man.
Yeah, it is a spot here for Tyler Glasnow. He's by far the overall top pitcher on the slate. If you guys are playing cash games today, you play him on FanDuel, on DraftKings. You're playing him as well. You find what other pitcher is going to work with him. Overall for the year, 2.53 ERA, 2.38 expected ERA. He has a 33.6% K rate. He is, if the season ended right now, he would win the Cy Young, and well, maybe not, because I mean, like, Imanaga has been ridiculous. Ranger Suarez has been really good as well. But at the very least, he'd be in the Cy Young conversation. The only thing that's an issue for Glasnow going forward is he going to stay healthy? It's something that's been a big issue for him throughout his career. He's never pitched more than 120 innings in a season. He's already halfway to that mark this season. So as far as things stand right now for Glasnow, I think that he has a strong case to being called the current best pitcher in baseball. And then also, if you look at him just for this slate individually, he projects so much better than every other pitcher that he's a very obvious option. The only question becomes is he's 54.4% projected owned. Do we want to be overweight to that number, underweight, or out the field? Because he is very, very popular. It's the only sticking point.
Yeah, I think he's the best pitcher in baseball right now. I do. I'm with you. You know, the thing is, though, when you have a guy getting this much ownership, you look at his top 2 pitcher probability in the top pitchers tool, he's still close to 50%. Like, that's not far off from ownership at all. You know what I mean? And another crazy part is you look at like the top value, he's top 4. He's up there with everybody else outside of, a Jose Quintana and Taijuan Walker, who we'll get to. But I think it's tough to get away from him. I'm getting a ton early in the day. The question becomes like, all right, if you do decide to get away from Glasnow, and yesterday, even Dylan Cease the day before, but like yesterday was it Michael King, right? He got lit up. There were a lot of other, like Waka and not Waka. Who was it?
Brandon Pfaadt.
Brandon Pfaadt was good for sure at 7,800. Very good. But then you also had, like Alec Marsh was good in that price range. Brian Wu was good in that price range. So it hurt you if you had King yesterday, because there were a bunch of other guys in that like $7,800 to $8,800 range that were all good. You don't have anyone even closely priced to this today. You've got Jared Jones against the Cubs, no real wind, no concerns. It looks like the rain shouldn't be an issue there. 7.5 run total. It's not the best matchup. So there's one check in the box for Glasnow because it's a better matchup, much lower total, higher strikeout team. So you have Jared Jones there. Who else do you have that's even remotely close? Like aside from Glasnow, you would just be going 2 mid-range pitchers on this slate, or you'd go all the way down to like a Jose Quintana. My guess is you're going to see a lot of Glasnow Quintana pairings, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you're going to see a lot of Glasnow and Taijuan Walker just because Walker's also pretty popular on this slate. So just to kind of put a bow on Tyler Glasnow and everything else that we've talked about here with like high end pitching. And I know it's been a big topic of debate in the YouTube chat about, hey, is it the chalk pitchers have sucked this year, which there's a little bit of truth to it in terms of the quality of pitching this year because of the amount of injuries. It's just less than it's been in previous years. So you're going to get more volatile chalk because the pitchers that are most popular, it's guys like Michael King as opposed to being like a prime Max Scherzer or a prime Jacob deGrom. So there is some correlation between there being more pitchers busting at chalk this year compared to other years and all these pitcher injuries. But as far as Tyler Glasnow goes, I have him about half my lineups at first run, so I don't have any kind of real strong stance here. He's going to be really popular, and I think the ownership is more or less warranted. I'm not going to have like 100% Glasnow or anything like that. He's likely going to land in about half my lineups.
I'll be honest. I have very little confidence in Taijuan Walker today. I am getting to some of him in the Sims, but there is so much about him that I don't like. 5.93 xERA. 27. I know he's only made 3 starts, but I've watched all 3 of them and they have not been pleasant. He's actually been luckier despite the fact that he hasn't been good. 5.93 xERA, 27% ground ball rate, coughing up power, 7.9% swinging strike rate. Here, I'm going to give you the crazy one though, Greg. Okay. 20% barrel rate through his first 3 games. These guys are making good contact on fly balls. They're at Citizens Bank Park. I actually bet the Mets money line today, to be honest with you. And I know Sean in chat saying thinks Quintana gets tuned up. Very possible. Phillies have taken the first 3 of this, not a series. It's a 2-game home and home series, but like the underlying numbers on Taijuan Walker, just from everything I'm looking at, they look really bad.
Maybe what we want to be doing then, because we got you're not liking Taijuan Walker all that much. Some people in chat talking about Jose Quintana potentially getting roughed up today. The total was only 8 in that game.
Yeah, that's
maybe we want to bet the over.
Yeah, I did bet the over on Taijuan Walker's earned runs as well.
There's another red flag with Taijuan Walker. It's a small sample size. He's only pitched 18 innings. It's been 3 starts. His average fastball velocity for his career, Lofty, is 94.3, and it has never been below 93 in any season of his career. It is 91.8 so far this year. So when you're talking about him getting barreled up as often as he is, not generating swing and strikes, and not getting really very many strikeouts, not that he's ever been a great strikeout pitcher, but still 19.5%, that's below his career average. You know, you have to be pretty concerned that his velocity is so far down from his career. I mean, 2.5 miles per hour as a drop versus career average on his fastball velocity. Even though it's only been 18 innings, that's enough for me to raise some red flags.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely. I mean, this could just be a game where you mentioned the 8-run total, but it could just potentially be a game where hitting pops off. The Mets are top 10 in WRC plus against righties. Like, that's actually better than I think most people would have assumed. Over 1,200 plate appearances. They're bottom 7 in strikeout rate. They're only middle of the road in ISO, but yeah, I mean, it's a 25% owned Taijuan Walker right now. I'd be lying to you if I told you I didn't have some interest in these Mets bats as well.
Yeah, you know, first run, I am getting to Taijuan Walker as a value option at pitcher, but, you know, it's not something when we're doing the first run on the strategy show, it's not like I'm fine combing my exposures to make sure that they're 100% accurate to what I want to be playing at lock. It's more of like, hey, here's a guideline for things for me to talk about. And then we kind of walk through all the individual pitchers, what we're getting to. Yeah, as of right now, though, with the popularity of Taijuan Walker and with him showing up in lineups as much as he is, I would be much more inclined to do an ROI downgrade boost if the slate was locking right now on Taijuan Walker and then upgrade the Mets bats.
I'm with you. I, you know, overall, I can see why some of these guys are getting ownership. It's just, you could make a lot of arguments against them as well. And I think that's what it comes down to. Now, Justin Steele is the other guy, 7,300 in against Pittsburgh, 7.5 run total. Right now, what's the money line number on this right now? Just curious.
Does Justin Steele follow you on Twitter now? He's gotten really into like DFS and fantasy lately.
Yeah, I heard. No, he doesn't. I don't think I'm on Twitter enough. But
he follows me now. That's one of my favorite follows.
Pretty sweet. I remember when Adam was real stoked. I think it was Jose Bautista followed him. And
he follows everybody.
If you look at Jose Bautista, he follows 814,000 people. Which was really fun. There was another pitcher too that just follows literally everyone. It's so odd. How are you following 814,000 people?
It's a way that some people like. I mean, there's some people like, now he has actual content that people enjoy worldwide. Wob, and that's not to say that wasn't that he had like bad content at one point. But it's hard to go from no followers to a lot of followers. And that's something people used to do to build a following on social media. Just be like, hey, I'm going to follow 500,000 people. If half of those people follow me, I have a 250,000 person audience. And all of a sudden you have something you can monetize.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Wob follows more people than follow him right now.
I think I have him blocked.
He follows 1.2 million. He has 1.1 million. But it worked for him. I mean, it clearly worked for him.
Yeah, I have Wob blocked on
why
on Twitter. Sean says DFS guys get so excited when an athlete follows them. I don't think it's exclusive to DFS guys. I think that's kind of if there's somebody you like for whatever reason, but that's a popular, famous person. Yeah, I think a lot of people would get excited about them following them.
Why'd you block Wob?
Because I find him to be annoying. And he was just constantly shows up on my timeline.
Mateus Lavi, how'd you end up doing on the Showdown? I saw you up there for a while. Not long enough, because I had a hockey game at 9:40 and got out, and it was not looking good. So, yeah. All right. So, what do we want to do with Justin Steele? This is like, I honestly think to me, the Justin Steele part of this whole slate is potentially the most interesting of any pitcher. Like, I don't think Glasnow is all that interesting. Taijuan Walker, if he crushes me today, then so be it, because I'll likely have a decent amount of Mets as well. But like, Steele hasn't thrown more than 74 pitches. He also coughed up 6 runs last time out and 3 home runs, by the way, against this same Pittsburgh team. But he's also somebody that has shown like real flashes. This isn't somebody that's just been dog shit forever. And it stands out to me as just one of those instances where you're looking at a guy who, over the last 2 seasons, it's actually pretty good, Greg, like 25% strikeout rate. None of the numbers were alarming whatsoever. Single digit home run to fly ball rate for Steele in 2022 and 2023, combined like 300 innings pitched. And then this year it hasn't been good, but his price reflects a guy who hasn't been good, not a guy who we know has been very good in the past.
Relative to his price and his ownership, I think he's the best option on the slate.
I think so too.
He's very cheap, right? He's $7,300 on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, he's $8,200. He's only 5% owned over on FanDuel. And his pitch count's been low so far. Started the year injured, ramping himself up now. But now if you look at the pitches that he's thrown, 67, 68, 74, I think a big part of the reason he hasn't gone deeper into games just because he hasn't pitched all that well. And I do think that last start, if he didn't just get destroyed, I think he probably would have thrown close to 80 pitches. And I think today we're probably getting somewhere around 90 pitches from Justin Steele if he looks decent. And that would maybe be a little bit of a concern for me. Like, hey, we might lose an inning from a top pitcher on a bigger slate, but we only have a handful of options. It's only a 5-game slate today. I don't really like a lot of the pitching options. So you got a guy in Justin Steele who's only $7,300. He's not all that popular relative to the slate, 24% owned. For reference, Taijuan Walker is slightly splitting hairs here, but Taijuan Walker is slightly more popular right now than Justin Steele. Justin Steele has a much better track record of being an elite starting pitcher than Taijuan Walker has been. And then also, as much as Brandon Steele has struggled this year, it's relative to expectations. He's still pitched better than what Walker's pitched this year. Steele's a 4.73 ERA, a 4.21 expected ERA. And you look at his last couple of years, actually even his last 3 years, even his rookie year where he made limited appearances, he was okay. 2022, 3.18 ERA, 3.59 expected ERA, was a high strikeout guy. Last year, 3.06 ERA, 3.5 expected ERA, also had a strikeout rate right around 25%. There's enough of a track record here that I feel pretty good that Justin Steele is going to bounce back. And why would we not want to bet on that on a small slate where he's at a floor price and he's not all that popular?
I agree. He's the first. That's why I was saying I think he's the most interesting option on this slate for all of those reasons you discussed. For everything I mentioned, is he a lock? No, of course not. But you're paying. Okay, last year, what would Steele's price point have been? Probably $9K in a spot like this.
Yeah, I could actually check right now what all of his price tags were against the Pirates. I'm sure he made a handful of starts against Pittsburgh last year. All right, so Justin Steele against Pittsburgh last season, he was $9,900, $9,800. Let's see if there was any other ones. Yeah, that's it. So he made 2 starts against the Pirates last year. He was $9,800 and $9,900.
There you go.
If we go back 2 years, yeah, there's nothing really there. But yeah, 2 starts last year. It was nearly 10K in each of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Clayton said, funny how these small slates can still give you so many options, both pitching and hitting. Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing, because sometimes you get ownership concentrated so heavily at the top in these spots, and then it's going to open up stacking options, just as kind of contrarian spots. I talked to Matt yesterday, on a 6-game early slate, like, hey, should we be considering this Colorado stack against a really heavily owned Michael King? And Colorado ended up putting up what, like 8 runs or something. I didn't get to a ton of them, but it happens. Looking at this slate, I think there's an argument to be made for a lot of that. Like, look at ownership. Let's back up for a second, Greg. Take a look at this ownership. Glasnow is at 55%. I'll go to FanDuel in a second. But, 2-pitcher site on DraftKings, a little bit more nuance here. Jared Jones at 30%, 9,100. Not a great matchup. He's a good pitcher, not a great matchup. Christian Javier against Oakland, he's at 25%. Christian Javier is the type of guy that, like, last year, I feel like he was the most overpriced pitcher for the entirety of the season, and he kept not being good. He's fine, but he's by no stretch of the imagination like an elite pitcher. He's also somebody that I bet his strikeout rate's like 20% this year. It can't be high.
His strikeout rate has died, which is very weird because he used to get a lot of strikeouts. And maybe this is actually correlated with pitchers not being able to use sticky substances anymore. There's a lot of pitchers that had drop-offs after that.
Well, a guy on his own team just got Ronald Blanco got ejected for it just the other day.
Listen to these numbers for Christian Javier. So 2022, that's when it first went into effect, the sticky substance ban. So overall for the season, he had a 33.2% strikeout rate, but I'm not going to look right now too deep into the numbers because I have to also look up like the actual date of when the sticky substance ban came into effect. But all right, so 2022, we'll say he was allowed to use sticky stuff that year, 33% strikeout rate. Last year, first full season without it, 23% strikeout rate. And also the pitch clock came into the mix, which is also something that could potentially impact how pitchers' rhythm or how effective they are. And now this year, it's all the way down to 16.7%. His strikeout rate is now half of what it was when he was allowed to grip the ball better. It's a crazy drop-off.
Look at his K- BB rate this year.
I mean, he basically gets like 1 walk for every strikeout.
2.8%. That's not good. Now, if you were to ask me, is Christian Javier viable today against Oakland? Sure. Yeah, sure, he is. But again, he is the furthest thing from a lock. Like, who do you like more, Justin Steele or Christian Javier?
Oh, Justin Steele.
Me
Justin
too.
Steele, in my opinion, has such a better chance of being an elite starting pitcher, or even just a good starting pitcher the rest of the season who's serviceable for fantasy. I would be very surprised if we get into, like, barring injury or whatever, I'd be very surprised if we're at the midway point of the season and Christian Javier is regularly more expensive than Justin Steele.
Yeah, or regularly starting. No, I mean, he should still be starting. Also, one other thing. Pittsburgh's not the same as we've seen in the past. Like, they've got they're a different offense than we've seen over the last couple of years. The last couple of years, they were just no good, but they also didn't strike out. This year, they're definitely, I mean, I'm not saying they're good, but they've got some like potentially good young bats. They have a seventh highest K rate in the league versus righties in about 1,200 plate appearances. Greg, they're WRC plus against righties this season. Or I'm sorry, Steele's a lefty. Steele's a lefty. Let me.
Yeah, I've got the lefty numbers up.
Yeah,
Their
I
offense
realized as I was saying
WRC
that Steele's a left-handed
lefties, which isn't terrible. They still strike out a bunch, though. To your point, 24.3% strikeout rate against lefties.
Yeah, which is eighth highest. So yeah, they've been better. I was going to say against righties, 77 WRC plus, which is just god awful. Middle of the road pretty much everywhere else against lefties. So yeah, it's not as good a matchup for Steele, but what I'm saying is the strikeouts are still there. I think it's a perfectly good spot. So, okay, you have Christian Javier, you have Justin Steele, you have Jared Jones at 9,100. He's in no man's land at that price point. And then Taijuan Walker at 25%. We touched on that. Zack Littell against Boston at Fenway. Quintana at 13% against Philly. That is far from an enviable spot. Then what? Cooper Criswell, Joey Estes, and Nick Martinez, who's likely to get bulk relief behind Brent Sutter, who's opening this game. Like, once you get down there, there's not a whole lot at all.
No, there's a lot of pitchers that I think we could write off on this slate relative to it being a 5-game slate. Like all those guys you just mentioned. Cooper Criswell, no thanks. Joey Estes, no thanks. Nick Martinez, also no thanks. Even Jose Quintana, who's picking up some ownership, I get it because he has an actual pulse and he's so cheap. He's $5,100. But I am not all that interested to play a double-digit owned Jose Quintana today either. Maybe my opinion will change as I build my lineups more later in the day and just those salary savings become necessary. But I would prefer to be on the side of the Phillies than be rostering Jose Quintana today.
Were you a big South Park fan back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, I still do. I haven't watched all the recent episodes. Eventually I will, though.
So, I mean, to me, because I don't really watch cartoons, but it's the best. It's like one of the best shows ever made. Like, I mean, the Tourette's episode, the Special Olympics episode, you could go down the list of just like all of and generally they revolve around Cartman, right? I need you to do me a favor. Mm-hmm. If you remember like South Park, you watched it. The new ones are really bad, unfortunately. Can you go look up, you guys too, if there's any like South Park, big South Park fans out there, help me out here. Go to Cooper Criswell's player page on DraftKings for a second. There is, I can't remember what character it is that does that smile, that has that smile in South Park. Just go to his player page and look at that. It resembles a very specific South Park character with that. I can't think of who it is, and it's going to drive me insane.
The police officer?
No, it's not Bar Brady.
Because I was thinking it was Officer Bar Brady because of the mustache.
No, it's that smile. It's that weird look. Someone in chat's going to hit this and it's going to make my day. Please. Or if you're watching after the fact, leave it in the comments. Tweet me at Loughran_D. It's going to drive me nuts, man. Going to absolutely drive me nuts trying to figure out who the hell that looks like from South Park. But do we fully want to write off Criswell today if he's getting no ownership? Because he has not been bad. Actually, he's been pretty good.
Let me look more at him.
And I'm not saying he is, a top of the line ace by any stretch. But if Walker at essentially the same price point is getting 25% ownership, Cooper Criswell is getting 9% ownership, and he has a 25% strikeout rate this season, a 3.89 FIP, 3.44 xERA, 3.23 xFIP. Like he really, and I think he's getting a bit lucky for sure. His BABIP is low, his strand rate is high. I understand all of that, but it's a 5-game slate and he's virtually unowned.
For like an ownership standpoint, I guess you can make a case for him, but I really, really question what the realistic upside is for him. He's not pitched more than 5 innings in any start this year. He's not totally stretched out. He hasn't thrown more than 80 pitches in any of his outings this year either. I think the most likely scenario is you're getting like 4 innings out of him. And then on top of that, you look at his career numbers and they're pretty weak. 4.41 ERA, 4.51 expected ERA. Even though he's worked mostly out of the bullpen, he still only has a 20.4% strikeout rate. He's 27 years old. He toiled around in the minor leagues for the majority of his career. Last year in AAA, he had a 3.93 ERA, 4.08 FIP. There isn't like that much extended day. He's only pitched 63 big league innings. And like I said, most of it's out of the bullpen. I don't know. I think the guy's probably just a replacement level player. Quintana's probably better than him.
Can I tell you, I figured it out.
Okay.
Do you remember, dude, do you remember the Man Bear Pig episodes?
Yeah.
That is the Al Gore smile when he was proud of himself. Look at it again, dude. It's 100%. I'm serial. Just, that's it. I mean, it took me a second, but I got it.
All right, I'm looking it up. But him dressed up as Man Bear Pig is so funny.
It's the best. Look up Al Gore's smile, South Park. I can send it to you. I already did it. But like, it's totally it, dude. That's it right there. I'm sending it to you right now.
Yeah, I got it. I've
the second one. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Cooper Criswell is South Park Al Gore. I hear you that he hasn't been good. You think Quintana's better than him against Philly at Citizens Bank Park, though?
When you consider the $1,700 in salary savings, probably.
Yeah.
I don't love either of them, though.
Neither do I. I don't really have much interest in Joey Estes either.
No, I definitely don't have interest, especially on the road against the Houston Astros. I've been bringing this up a good amount over the last couple of weeks. The Astros are about to really start to, because there's only one way for the Astros to go. They're only going to get better going forward, especially when you consider guys like Bregman off to a slow start, Yordan Alvarez off to a slow start relative to his standards. This is going to be a very good offense going forward, and they're going to start beating up on some bad teams. We've seen that a little bit lately. They've won, let's see, I think they're on like a little bit of a winning streak right now. They have won, they've won 4 games in a row. They've won 6 of their last 10 now. This is going to be one of the better teams in baseball going forward. I expect them to hit Joey Estes pretty hard.
Yes, they clearly were nowhere near as bad as they looked earlier in the year. Last one. We didn't really talk about him, but I think it at least warrants a conversation. And if we're going to do a 5-game slate, I'm not going to have you guys, I'm not going to not talk about these guys because what's the point, especially when Walker and Javier and those guys are so popular when they're not that good. Zack Littell is only getting 15% ownership, and I think it's because that price point is in kind of an odd range, but he's actually been good as well. And it's not like he's pitched particularly deep in the games, but Boston has the 5th highest K rate against right-handed pitching this season. This offense really is not that great in Boston. They're 20th, I think, in Boston WRC plus versus righties. Yeah, is 18th. They have power with a 166 ISO, but everywhere else they've really just been kind of average. And Littell's been pretty good, 25% K rate. The numbers don't look bad on him at all, and he's getting about 15%. He has a 3.2 xFIP, and everything else I see on him looks good. He hasn't allowed any power in 8 starts either.
He wasn't bad last year. The one thing I will say, I do think he's a little bit overpriced, and the Sims aren't really getting me to him. But he's not like somebody who I'm going to be like, oh my God, I can't have lineups with Zack Littell. It's more so if he's in a lineup or two, that's totally fine. He's in a price point all the way. He's the only guy who's priced in the 8Ks. So you got Jared Jones is $700 more expensive than him. Then he's $600 more than Christian Javier. I think what happens with Littell is he just is going to land in some lineups because he's the only player at that price point. But it's a kind of tough matchup for him on the road against Boston. Rafael Devers just recently came back from injury. And then also you've got a guy here in Littell that probably doesn't have the most upside relative to his salary. He's fine, but I don't have any real strong take on him. Just that the Sims are not getting him in lineups really at all.
Let's talk about some bats then. Oh, when's the promo over for NBA? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow is the last day of the Edwards promo.
Yeah. And what's that promo get you, Greg?
That will get you NBA Sims Max, $19.99 for a 1-week package. So if you guys have been wanting to find the best ways to play some of these showdown slates, because that's what's coming up for NBA. Loughran and I were talking about it right before the show started. There might be a 2-game NBA slate on Sunday, but probably not. We're probably looking at the end of 2-game NBA slates, just going to be 1-game slates. And one thing that is very beneficial about using our NBA Sims tool for showdowns, it's going to tell you which lineups are expected to be duped. So it'll help you weed some of those lineups out. So this is something that I find to be invaluable for Showdown. I didn't really play much of Showdown in the past, mostly because I didn't have the best way to figure out how do I weed out lineups that are going to be duped 100 or 200 times. The Sims do this for me now when I build lineups in the contest generator, then simulate out the slate. So this is the best way to identify the best lineups to be getting to in Showdown. And also, if you're going to win, you could avoid some dupes and you have a chance to win actual solo or win just lineups that are only duped by a few people, as opposed to some of those Showdown slates where you'll see a winning lineup that might be duped 800 times. And those are kind of lineups you don't want to be playing.
Yeah, man. Links in the description. It's the first link in the description, by the way. Get you under $20 for the entirety of the week. Every game, every day, whether it's a 2-game or it's a showdown, as Greg was pointing out. You don't need to use the promo code Edwards. It'll just auto load for you when you use that link in the description or chat. It feels like, it's funny because you always feel like NBA is winding down, and then you realize that the prize pools are still bigger than NBA or MLB. It's unfortunate, but that's the case. Elway's Army. What's up, Dave? Dave Oliver. He did screenshots weekly from this guy. He said NBA's crushing. And Francisco Rubio, Showdown is really tough for me. We'll check it out. Yeah, look, man, if you don't love it at the end of the day, at the end of the week, it's $20. And I'd assume you spent $20 worse elsewhere. At least in this case, you're spending it somewhere that can put you in a spot to win, a really hefty amount of money. And then you free roll from there, right? But the thing about Showdowns, and we just seen a lot of the screenshots, Jordan threw them on the screen. We've had a lot of our subs saying that the NBA, I feel like a lot of them have just not primarily used it for Showdown, Greg, but the best success they've had in the playoffs with these massive prize pools too has actually been with Showdown contests on those later games and not even the main slates.
Yeah. So go ahead, check out the Sims package. It is tomorrow, last call for it is going to be tomorrow.
Link in the description and in chat. If you have questions, hit Greg or myself up. Happy to answer them. Jump in the Discord. Check out all the tutorials that we have that Greg did as well. I think they'll take you a long way. All right. So talking stacks. Dodgers against, presumably Martinez is going to look pretty good. Houston against Joey Estes. That spot to me is just fantastic today, honestly. And when it comes to the Houston Astros, you just laid it all out nicely. Yeah, this team, fine. They got off to a really rough start. At one point, they were 7-16 or 7-18, just really rough. And it's not to say that they've been out there putting up 100 runs every single game, but there's still just an immense amount of talent in this lineup. And I think on a day like today, they grade out number 1 in stack score in our top stacks tool. They are expensive though, Greg, at the top between Alvarez, Altuve, and Tucker. But aside from that, you are going to have some of these guys low 4K, 3K range that'll make it actually possible to build Houston stacks.
This looks like a very good slate to be spending up for offense. The one thing that's maybe a little bit concerning to me about the Houston Astros is yesterday, they looked like the best stack on the slate by a mile. If you were looking at our top stacks tool, if you're looking at our Sims tool, this was a team that looked very under-owned and just looked like a smash spot for them yesterday. And what ended up happening was, results aside, they ended up being so much more popular than projected. They had like 2.5x the ownership of what they were projected to come in at. That's one thing that's a little bit concerning to me, is that because people have just been off the Astros so much until they were on this recent streak, now it looks like everybody's starting to jump back on the Houston Astros. So do get a little bit concerned that even though they're projected for 13% ownership, they've the second highest top stack odds on the slate, 16.6%. We have this team being under owned, that just that ownership is going to end up being much higher than projected, because that is what happened yesterday.
For sure. I will say I'm getting like my 5-man stack exposure right now to Houston is up there. It also pleases me to see, Greg, that my second highest exposed stack, second most exposed stack, without me doing anything. I haven't made any adjustments, any boosts. This is just an unadulterated factory setting Sims run. 15% to the New York Mets.
Nice. Yeah, the Mets are my third highest owned stack on first run. We're going to be, more or less similar, considering we're just using the same data and just pressing 2 buttons and seeing what lineups the Sims give us. But yeah, right now the Mets are showing up as a team that are looking like one of the top leverage plays on the entire slate. Taijuan Walker, we talked about him before. He's projected for 25% ownership. If people are looking to punt at pitcher and spend up at offense, Taijuan Walker looks like the guy that the field is clicking on. That makes the Mets look like a great spot for leverage. If this ownership holds, this is a really strong consideration for single entry, the New York Mets, because what I think people are going to be doing in single entry is playing Glasnow, then going to one of the top offenses in terms of like stud offense, because that's where the chalk is. And then people are going to have to save salary somewhere. And that's where Taijuan Walker is going to be clicked on. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Taijuan Walker north of 30% owned in single entry. If that's the case, I love the leverage that we'd be getting on the Mets.
I absolutely do as well. And the leverage right now, I mean, the leverage right now that I'm getting is significant for sure. I'm pretty much let me see, twice the field. If you include my 4 and 3-man stacks, yeah, well, 3x the field and 5 stack exposure right now, based on what we have the pool ownership being on the Sims tool. So pretty significant. A lot of leverage there. And then some Tampa, some Cubs, some Boston. Once you get past the Mets, everything is pretty grouped together outside of a few of these. You know which one I'm not getting a lot of? I'm getting a little bit in actually, I'm really not getting much. I'm not getting a lot of Dodgers at all right now.
So I do have 10% of the Dodgers right now. And the one thing it's more 3-man stacks than it is the 5-man stacks, though. The biggest issue that you constantly run into with the Dodgers, which I mean, I probably have said this on 30 shows this year. People are probably tired of hearing me say it. They're just very expensive. You've got a top-loaded offense where the guys are very, very expensive. It's hard to have that much interest in the guys at the bottom of the order. So 3-man stacks has been my preferred way to attack this Dodgers team this year, because it's just hard to make lineups where it's like Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Max Muncy, Mookie Betts. You just run into salary issues. So I prefer to be making 3-man stacks of the Dodgers, playing some studs, pairing them with the cheap stack, maybe a cheap starting pitcher as well. 5-man stacks, it's just so hard to navigate the salaries.
Right now on DraftKings, there are 5 Dodger hitters. I'm sorry. There are 6 Dodger hitters above 5K. Muncy, Smith, Teoscar Hernandez, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Shohei Ohtani. They are all 5K and up. That's crazy.
Also, somebody in chat, I think this is a very valid talking point, because Tristan Ward asked, are the Mets good for single entry on FanDuel? The reason that Loughran are liking the Mets as a stack and why I like them for single entry is because of the leverage you're getting off Taijuan Walker. They're still on a playable on FanDuel, but Walker's not popular on FanDuel, so you're losing most of the reason that we like getting to the Mets against Walker.
Yeah, you're just like right now, Walker ownership on FanDuel is 7%, and it's 25% on DraftKings, where obviously you're forced to roster 2 pitchers. So it makes a big difference. Glasnow, Jared Jones, Javier, and Littell are the guys getting ownership on FanDuel. No one really else down there. not to get too off track here, but are there any cheap pitchers that you look? Taijuan Walker is $9,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah.
That is absurd. I don't understand that even a little. I, honestly, I'd be surprised if he was 7% at $9,000. But like Walker being more expensive than Zack Littell is wild, and more expensive by $800 than Justin Steele. Shit, I don't think he should be more expensive than Cooper Criswell.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the FanDuel pitching options, I mean, Tyler Glasnow at the high end, fairly obvious option for cash games we talked about before. For tournaments, though, I'd be most apt to go to probably either Justin Steele, maybe Christian Javier at $7,800 as well, but $8,200 for a 5% on Justin Steele. I think that's the best play relative to price and ownership on FanDuel for pitching.
By the way, I ran a Sims for FanDuel, and 40% Glasnow, 27% Javier. So that price point on Javier clearly makes a difference on FanDuel. As far as stacks go for FanDuel, let's see. Highest stack exposure, Houston, then Philly, then Pittsburgh and Oakland. So again, very little Dodgers. Very little Dodgers. Houston combined 4 and 3-man stacks is around 36%. Philly around 27%. Pittsburgh around 19%. And the Oakland A's around 16%. So that's what I'm getting on FanDuel at what, 11:50 in the morning.
Yeah, I haven't run Sims for FanDuel to really look at that side of it. But if I was building... salary becomes so much less of an issue on FanDuel. I'd be most apt to go to the Dodgers at their ownership. They have about half the ownership of the Astros on FanDuel. They are still super expensive, but it becomes less of an issue on FanDuel when there's so many like 2,200, 2,300 bats that are actually decent hitters. It's relative to ownership. I think I like the Dodgers the best on FanDuel.
What about Pittsburgh against Steele? I mean, you and I said some positive things about Steele. He's cheap. We know he's been good in the past. He's also somebody that I think there are uncertainties here, and get into this scenario a lot, especially on short slates where you may like a pitcher, but you may not hate the other side of it. He's coming off this same matchup against Pittsburgh at PNC Park, gave up 3 home runs in 4 innings. What do you make of a low-owned Pittsburgh Pirates stack today? Because he's just as owned as Taijuan Walker.
Yeah, that's going to be a no for me. There would be some leverage off Justin Steele just from a standpoint of, he's picking up some ownership, but I think he's going to be really good going forward. And I think he's undervalued on the slate. So with it being a small slate, it's hard to say that I want to have 0% of an offense, but I only have 3% Pirate stacks right now. I don't think this team is going to make up any kind of real significant portion of my lineups.
Any other teams you want to get into that we haven't touched on yet? Philly, Oakland, Tampa, Cubs?
Not really. Overall, if we're looking at the DraftKings stacks, Houston is the team that, if this ownership holds, it's the team I have the most interest in. I like the Mets a lot as a leverage stack. I like the Dodgers as 3-man secondary stacks. And then for FanDuel, it's a little bit easier to get to the Dodgers where just pricing becomes less of a concern.
Let's do top pitchers and top bats, top stacks for this one. And as always, guys, you know it. I tell you at the end of every show, if you're not on Sleeper yet, you're getting the $500 deposit bonus matched instantly up to $500. No matter what you have up to $500, they're doubling that out of the gate. Your bankroll goes from whatever you put in to double that out of the gate. Dynamic pricing up to 100x your entries. And of course, with that, it means with dynamic pricing, like if you wanted to grab home runs and put them into your entry, if you wanted to grab stolen base or doubles or anything, and doubles and triple doubles in basketball, touchdown scores in football, all of that stuff, you can actually do it because they attach a multiplier to it. So where it would be like 4-1 on a traditional sports book, you get a 4x multiplier on that specific leg, and you throw that into the entry up to 100x. You can do up to 8 per entry. It's a lot, but a lot of cool ways to do it, and a free square today as well. So if you're new, and you decide you're like, all right, I'm going to do it. I've been on the fence, but why not? I'm not in the legal betting state. Get on Sleeper, have some fun with this outside of just DFS. Anthony Edwards, 0.5 point, discounted all the way down to 0.5 point. So you grab that over, throw it into one of your lineups, and out of the gate, you're already putting yourself in a great spot, plus the $500 deposit match bonus. Link to Sleeper is in the description and in the chat if you want to check it out. All right, top 3 pitchers. Where are we going today?
All right, so pitchers, let's go to, it's kind of hard to figure out who I want as the third one to be. On the high end, Tyler Glasnow. On the low end, Justin Steele. I'll just leave it at that because there's a bunch of other pitchers I kind of find to be similar. I think these two are like on a tier of their own in terms of where they're priced.
Yeah, Glasnow and Steele for sure. I think I'd probably still go Jared Jones here just because of the strikeout upside. I really don't love anybody down there like Quintana, Martinez, Estes. I don't hate Zack Littell either at his ownership, but I don't love it. Christian Javier, I think you're right. Once you get into that range, outside of Steele and Glasnow, there's really, you're just hoping that if you have one of those guys in your lineup, he's better than the others. Not that you're not always hoping that, but yeah, it's tough. As far as stacks go, I mean, Houston for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The Mets, I think the Mets, and I love what you said in single entry where Walker's going to have ownership. I'll go Houston, Mets, and Philly.
For me, Houston as the team that I'm likely to have the most exposure to in large field tournaments, the Mets being my favorite leverage stack on the slate, and then the Dodgers, my favorite secondary 3-man stack.
All right. Hey, as always, appreciate you guys hanging out. Follow Greg at G Ehrenberg DFS. Remember, if you do take advantage of the promo, the Edwards promo, and you have questions, hit us up. We're always happy to answer no matter where you can find us. Jump in Discord, say hello, and we'll be back tonight live before lock. Are we doing, I assume we're still doing a live before lock for NBA as well.
Yep. It'll be MLB live before lock is going to be at 6 tonight. NBA live before lock is going to be from 8 to 8:30 for the 1-game slate. And then Josh and I'll be doing the post lock show right after that.
Beautiful. Over there on playback. I assume you're there.
Yes,
We're racking up the subs over there. It's been a lot of fun. Hey, appreciate it, guys. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you back here tonight. Back-to-back live before locks, little playback action. Kind of a light day in the sports world, but we're here for it. We're going to try and win some money. Peace.